Training camp's over a month away, but here are the top storylines. I'm already thinking about it. Let's talk. Let's go. Bears.
Bend over to your right.
What the was that?
What's up, Bears fans? People want to hear me talk.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of the Nicholas Moreano Show. I am your host, Nicholas Moreano. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and then share this YouTube channel with fellow Bears fans. What's up, everybody? It's been a little bit since I've actually done a live show. The last thing that I posted was me failing terribly at Tyson Bagent's Burpee Mile Challenge. I woke up on... It was Sunday morning, last Sunday morning, and it was Tyson Bagent's 25th birthday. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. Let's just try out this Burpee Mile Challenge. That was my third time attempting it. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. It didn't get too hot, to be completely honest, but it got hot enough to where it was gonna be another obstacle for me to, overcome as I was trying to just do the damn thing. But yeah, I failed miserably. Got halfway before, I just had to call it quits. I was trying to look for a track again. Apparently tracks are not open on the weekends. I went to my local high school to see if I can get in there. Gates were locked. Went to another high school that wasn't too far away, also locked. I'm like, damn, man, I'm not gonna be able to do it. So I just went on a random field, mapped out exactly the distance I needed, and then figured out how many back and forths I needed to do to get to a mile's distance worth of burpee broad jumps. And yeah, I got literally to the halfway point, and I'm like, I'm closing in on 2 hours. I know Tyson Bagent finished this whole thing, and I forgot exactly what it was. Hour 7 minutes, something like that. Yeah. I don't know. I have this weird tendency to think that I can just do these things without really training for them. And I got a really good comment on the last video that I posted, me just kind of attempting that challenge. And like, Nick, what did you expect? Like, you haven't been training for this CrossFit types of workouts. And if you maybe if you train for them, you would get closer. And that makes a lot of sense. But I don't, for whatever reason, I never think that way. I just kind of, I can do it. For whatever reason in my mind, yeah, I can run a marathon. I could, but I'd probably be terrible at it because I haven't trained or won't. I don't know. Maybe I would train for it, but yeah, I don't know. I just always think I could do these things. And I think I can, but definitely couldn't do Tyson Bagent's challenge. I don't know if I'm going to attempt it again. Maybe at this point, I'll have to tell him about it when I see him again at Hallis Hall. And I'm already thinking about that. Hallis Hall training camp. Even though the offseason training program literally ended last Tuesday, I'm already thinking ahead to late July, where the Bears will return to Hallis Hall, get ready to put on some pads, and actually be in training camp. The first one for Ben Johnson. And I know it's going to be a highly anticipated one, not only with the joint practices with the Bills, Dolphins, but also just, what this team's actually going to look like with this, I think, intensity turned up a notch, when you actually can evaluate better the offensive and defensive line play, the one-on-ones that are going to happen, all these things that I'm just thinking about already. And yet we're still over a month away before any of that can truly happen. So that's why I want to do this show. I'm like, I just have all these thoughts, and I just want to get them out there to tell you what I'm thinking about already as the Bears are, away for the summer. And then unfortunately that means it's the dead period of the NFL. This is the one true dead period right here. Outside of this, there's something always going on. There's something that you can always be looking forward to in a week or a week and a half, something like that. And right now, this is it. But we'll get into all of that. And before I do, really quickly, for any of the audio listeners, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, anywhere you can really listen to your podcast, find the Nicholas Moreano Show. So let's get this one rolling and just kind of start here with what I'm thinking about as some of the top storylines to follow. And if you're in the chat here, what are you going to be looking forward to as the Bears are, away from Hallis Hall, doing their own thing now, getting ready. And you know what? I think it was important really quickly before I get into my storylines, what Ben Johnson said. It wasn't on Tuesday, but the last practice that the Bears had at Hallis Hall about not using training camp to get in shape, but you better come in shape going into training camp. And it was a message for every single player on that roster to know what to expect, what physical shape you need to be in as you're getting ready for, again, what should be an intense, highly anticipated training camp. So that in mind, here are just some of the top storylines that I'll be following really quickly. Fidel, what's going on, my man? Appreciate you for hanging out here on the Thursday morning. So let's get into it. My first just storyline, and these should make a lot of sense too, as we're kind of going through it. And actually, really quickly, let me hide my display name, and then let's go into here. First storyline I got is just the top rookies on the field. And what I mean by that is actually seeing these guys, Colston Loveland, Luther Burden, actually practicing, because from the start, we haven't seen any of those guys. There are days where I never saw a Colston Loveland or a Luther Burden out there, whether it was inside the Walter Payton Center or outside on the practice fields at Hallis Hall. Didn't see them. So just actually seeing those two guys in uniform practicing, that's one of the top storylines for me. Seeing what they look like in this offense, seeing how they're being implemented, see all the mistakes they're going to inevitably make. I mean, I think that's important when we're evaluating these two top draft picks, because I think even though they are rookies, they're going to be big parts of this offense throughout the course of this season. And then really quickly, Ben Johnson was asked on Tuesday by reporters, on the status of both of these guys moving forward. For Colston Loveland, will he be good to start camp? And here's what Ben Johnson had to say. To be honest with you, I don't know. I haven't even looked that far ahead. We will get that. We will get that before we officially break for summer. Just the expectation for camp and who's going to be full go day one and who we are still limited and working in. So I don't have that answer for you at this moment. And then he got asked again, will he be ready for camp in a different way? And he said, Ben Johnson, that's the plan. He said some of the hurdles. I'm sorry, that was Colston Loveland when he was asked, will he be ready for camp? And he said, that's the plan. He said some of the hurdles that are included for him right now, getting that strength back and just some mobility. But he has been running routes and catching passes. Don't know exactly when those happen, running routes or catching passes, but not a lot of it. I think actually way back in rookie minicamp, you saw him like shadowing routes off to the side, but nothing too definitive or actually happening. But I'm looking forward to seeing how Colston Loveland is utilized next to a Cole Kmet. It's going to be so early too in the stages of, that offense in the early days of training camp that, what we're seeing the start of mid-July definitely won't be, what we might be seeing later on August and obviously into September. But I just want to see how they both move and what it kind of looks like. Luther Burden, we got a chance to see a little bit more of, but still, after he went down with the soft tissue injury, we obviously haven't seen him. So you had to see other receivers like Olamide Zaccheaus, Devin Duvernay really take all those reps in the slot, and Tyler Scott as well. Just being utilized in the first team offense because Luther Burden wasn't available, and it does stink. And Ben Johnson was of course asked about him, and he said Ben Johnson and Luther Burden being ready for camp, and Ben Johnson said he will after being asked this question a second time. Johnson also did say that he misses a lot by not being out there, valuable reps with teammates, and teammates have to be able to trust Luther Burden, and the coaches do as well. And so he also said it's a shame that he got dinged up. It is a shame because I wanted to see his movement skills. I wanted to see, even though like the yards after the catch ability is known for in college, like you still want to see what that looks like, even if it isn't just helmets and shorts. it's still a good way of being introduced to a new player. So that is my top storyline, though. When you put a top draft pick, a top 10 pick in Loveland, and then you get a guy like Luther Burden right out of the second round, at the top of the second round. Naturally, you want to see what these pass catchers look like. I know Caleb Williams wants to see what these pass catchers look like. Same with Ben Johnson, even the rest of the teammates, because that's, like I said at the beginning of this storyline, they're gonna be a big part of this offense throughout this course of the 2025 season. Okay, let's get to my next one. Shouldn't be a surprise either, but as I'm looking at storylines, just the competition at left tackle still, right? Ozzy Trapillo and Karan Amagaji have gone back and forth with starting with the first team offense. And, I think that was really to be expected from this coaching staff, and probably both of those players, knowing that you have to see both of these guys, what they look like in the offense next to the player that they're going to be, mostly next to in Joe Tooney. So it made sense that we saw a kind of a rotation there. But the question that I'm going to have really going into this training camp is how long that rotation lasts. And then also factoring in that Braxton Jones needs to enter this equation at some point, and he hasn't been able to due to the, season-ending injury last year. So when he does factor in there, how does that look first off? And then how long will that last? Because I remember Ben Johnson or somebody saying initially that they don't want it to, they want to make a decision on that, I would think, pretty quickly, so that you do have continuity on the line throughout training camp, going into preseason, going into week 1 when you host the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football. So I just, obviously we know who the competition is between Braxton Jones, Ozzy Trapillo, Karan Amagaji, but how long will it last? That, I think, is the most important question. And obviously we will not have any indication of that. And also depends too, I think, on the recovery process from Braxton Jones. And, way back at the owners' meetings, Ben Johnson said he was going to be limited. Already kind of projecting that forward for a guy like Braxton Jones. So if it takes him longer to get back on the field, can one of the two guys that are practicing win a job and just be named the starter without actually even seeing Braxton Jones? I mean, it could be a possibility, right? If Ozzy Trapillo is looking great at that left tackle spot, I think even though Ben Johnson, Dan Rochar, the offensive line coach, would most likely want to see what Braxton Jones would look like, you got to go with I think if it does happen, like a guy that's looking really well and stacking good practices, and you don't mess that up, and you find your left tackle and you go with it. I don't see why that couldn't be one of the possibilities that could happen in training camp, as the Bears are looking at all their options and how to really just kind of approach it at this point. And Ozzy Trapillo, he actually spoke to the media on Tuesday. And he was asked about, playing with the starting unit, and he called it a great opportunity, really beneficial to work, next to guys who have played in this league. You're not going to find probably anybody more consistent. And with the pedigree that Joe Tooney has, what he's done in his career with the Chiefs and the Patriots. So it's a great opportunity to play next to a guy like that. And then he was asked how his overall thoughts and how it went at left tackle throughout this offseason training program. He said it was actually easier for him because he didn't go into a flow state like he would at right tackle. I thought that was an interesting comment, because he said not going into the flow state allows him to hone in on minor differences that coaches want to see, and then he can, apply those differences that the coaches want into his game. And, I thought it would have almost been the opposite. Like, you go into your flow state at right tackle and it just becomes more seamless. But because that isn't the position he's been playing the last 2 seasons at Boston College, where he was a right tackle, he can take the feedback that coaches are giving him, apply it maybe a little bit better, because he's not in that flow state. So I thought that was interesting with just the learning process for a guy like Ozzy Trapillo. But I'm looking forward to seeing him. I'm also, when he got to Chicago, baby face, no facial hair whatsoever. Then you see him at the last press conference on Tuesday, full beard, looks a little older. Looks like a 6'8", 300+ pound offensive lineman, offensive tackle. But looking forward to seeing how that competition really plays out and, just really how the Bears approach it. I think that's going to be a good indication of how this staff wants to identify answers at a really important spot at left tackle. So if the Bears can do that, and if one of these guys can really show that on the football field, then, they'll be in a pretty good spot there. Okay, let's get into my third one, and then I'll probably get into a quick break and then end with the last two that I have here. But we have the competition at left tackle. Previous to that, we had the top rookies on the field. What could possibly be the third storyline that I probably could have had arguably at the top here? Oh, Caleb Williams. Of course, anything involving, the Bears' second-year quarterback. And specifically for me, it's playing on time. And I think why this is so important for, obviously, this offense, Ben Johnson, Caleb, is because it's going to be such a huge part of the offense and how it's supposed to be run. And I'll just take you, like, in the last practice that I was able to attend, well, that would have been the last Thursday mandatory minicamp practice, I believe. And again, couldn't tell you exactly the reasons for it, but Caleb was rolling out to his right several times in that practice. And like I said, is that due to the pressure at times? Sure. Is it due to guys maybe not getting open? Possibility. Is it due to Caleb, just naturally liking to go that way? Also a possibility. But playing on time in rhythm is going to be so important for the success of this offense in 2025. Because when you think about Jared Goff and why he was a 4,000-yard passer the last 3 seasons while Ben Johnson was the offensive play caller in Detroit, obviously there's steady progression by Goff, but you have to be able to operate the offense in what the play is asking you to do. And what usually is going to be happening on a lot of these plays is playing on time, knowing when to come off certain reads when the defense is dictating something. And then when you do that, hitting players on time when they're supposed to be in a certain window. I wasn't at the practice where Ben Johnson got on Caleb Williams after a 7-on-7 rep where Caleb threw the ball to the flat to Roschon Johnson. And then Ben Johnson, according to reporters, got after it or was able to talk. He spoke to Caleb about it. And I think it was Courtney Crone that asked the question in the press conference, like, what was the teaching moment there? And Ben Johnson just said he was late. So, again, yes, you made the completion, but it wasn't at the timing that it needed to be at for the play to most likely work because that was in a 7-on-7 period. There's no rush or anything like that. So for that play to actually work, you need to be on time. And I'm so glad that Ben Johnson's been such a stickler for the details because if you let something like that pass, guess what? In your mind as Caleb Williams, you're like, oh, I got there. I made the play. I can make that play again because I got there. I didn't have any feedback. Nah, man. You heard from your coach. He wasn't pleased with the rep. And now when that concept, play design, whatever it may be, comes up again, you know when to get to that flat and how quickly you need to for the play to have success. And that, I think, is going to be, again, ultra important for Caleb Williams in his second season in the NFL because obviously the line did not help him a lot at times in his rookie year, but we all know that Caleb Williams held onto the ball too long at times. You're waiting for things to develop downfield that are not going to be there. So now this year, and it's going to take time learning a new offense, but just having a better understanding of what it's going to take for certain plays to be right. And, Ben Johnson was asked too on Tuesday's press conference just about Caleb Williams, what has stood out And he said, like, there's a throw every practice, one or two throws where, you could just see that talent level when, especially when he gets out of the pocket, extends plays. Like, that's a part of what Caleb Williams can do, right? We saw that so many times last season. That's great. That's such a good asset to have if you're Ben Johnson as a play caller. Because he said, even when the defense essentially has everything right, Caleb can make things right himself because of his playmaking ability. And like I said, that's amazing to have for a play caller, for an offense. But when you do need to play in rhythm, play in time, and hit targets when they need to be hit because of certain windows against a certain defensive concept, that's going to be, again, I can't emphasize this enough. It's going to be so important for this offense's success this upcoming season. And just Caleb Williams even being there on Tuesday when the practice was primarily meant for the rookies, undrafted players, things like that. Roma Dunze was also there. Just them being there, I think shows the want for getting this offense where it needs to be, because Ben Johnson said it. Like, Caleb was there, obviously knowing that, they're not where they want to be. And they both understand that, but they just need to keep working at it. And, just being there in that last practice, I think speaks volumes. Caleb Williams, Roman Dunze, Ben Johnson, and wanting to get this offense clicking sooner rather than later. And we'll see how long that actually takes. I'm pretty sure I've said it on a couple shows. I think it's going to take a while, guys. I don't think they're going to come out week one firing where it's looking great. I think it's just unrealistic. I think it helps, though. Ben Johnson's had a lot of success in years past against Brian Flores. Shoot, Caleb Williams had success against Brian Flores' defense last year now was that Thomas Brown calling the plays at that time already? Potentially. But yeah, it looked good in that first game where they lost in overtime against the Vikings. So I'm looking forward to the progression of the offense, but specifically Caleb playing on time. If I don't see him rolling out in training camp and making those athletic throws on the run, that's not a bad thing. Honestly, I would almost prefer him staying in the pocket and making those throws. I'm like, And again, there's other factors that are involved in there. How's the offensive line holding up? He knows the defense can't touch him. And if they do, like Montez Sweat did last year, there's going to be some problems, especially with Ben Johnson there too. But I would almost prefer that. Let's see Caleb operate in the pocket on time, not hold the ball as long, and get that offensive rolling. Let me get to a couple of these comments before I get to my first break, but I have Khalid here. Nick, do you think Ben told Caleb, hey, man, get out of the pocket for a second and go do your thing? Caleb, potentially. There maybe are times where you want to see that happen. I think, though, and again, I have no indication of what the game plan is for any of these practices. We kind of get details about it, like, oh, here's a third down. You could see that in practice. Oh, they're working low red zone, third down, certain situations. But you know what? For me, I think that for Caleb's benefit right now, operate it the way that it needs to be run, because we know what you can do when the play is extended. Of course, there's pressure. Like, Caleb needs to do naturally what he needs to do and get away from that. So if you see, Montez Sweat beat Ozzie Trapillo off the left edge, run right. Like, you're not going to stand in there in the pocket and just want to take a sack. You're going to Caleb wants to extend a play. So if that naturally happens, I'm sure it's fine. But I think you need to see what it looks like too on time and rhythm. But I'm sure there are going to be times in practice like, hey, for the defense's look, get outside the pocket, see how they adjust. So I think it's a very beneficial thing for both the offense and defense when he gets outside the pocket. Bear down forever. Sorry, I'm late. No need to be sorry. Sorry, I didn't give you a heads up that I was going live. That's on me. So, how is Dio Odengbo doing? Haven't heard anything about him. Bear down forever. That's a good question there. I really don't have any details, to be completely honest. I would say that he's been pretty quiet. And you know what? For a lot of these defensive players, it's like, oh, you got pressure. You beat your man off the edge like Dominique Robinson is flash, but this is in helmet and shorts against Darnell Wright. Let's see what training camp does, but I will definitely monitor that as we are, over a month away from training camp. How is Dio Dangbo there? Key free agent acquisition on the edge opposite of Montez Sweat. So, yeah, and Darren here, I see morning everybody, and then won't tell until the pads. Completely agree with that. The offensive and defensive linemen too, just based off their press conference, they know that. They understand. Like, this is good to learn the system. You're learning, and Dennis Allen has a complex system as we're kind of hearing more and more from the players, but we won't know. We won't know until it's pads are on. So yeah, bear down forever. Hope it won't be a bad signing. Me too. I'm sure Bears fans are hoping that's not the case as well. But guys, let's get into a quick break, and then I have two more, I believe. Let's see. Looking down, two more storylines that I'll be following. Of course, there's so many more, right? But before we get to some of those storylines of just what I'm going to be watching for in this upcoming training camp, I have to first tell everybody about my friends at Windy City Sports Cards. They specialize in buying and selling all things related to Chicago sports. Whether you're a diehard fan of the Bears, Bulls, Cubs, White Sox, or Blackhawks, they've got you covered with an extensive selection of sports memorabilia and collectibles. In addition to those Chicago-focused items, everybody, they also offer a vast collection of sports trading cards and memorabilia from your favorite teams and players. Visit their online store to find exactly what you're looking for to complete your collection or to discover a new favorite. You can check them out at 312-WindyCitySportsCards.com. That's 312-WindyCitySportsCards.com. And of course, I have to tell everybody about my friends at Protein 2.0. Look, I always have my orange mango here on hand. Not only is it delicious, everybody, but you do get your 20 grams of protein in every drink. You get 350 milligrams of electrolytes. You get your daily your 100% of your B5 and B6 vitamins in your standard protein drinks. But they also offer a protein drink that has a little bit of caffeine in it, a little less protein, but you get your caffeine, you get your protein, and it tastes delicious. That's the thing. That's, I think, what separates it from other types of protein drinks. It's going to taste really good and taste like a Gatorade, as opposed to maybe one of those thicker protein shakes. And they have a simple goal there at Protein 2.0. Make it easier to get the protein and hydration your body needs without all of the unnecessary junk. So you can check out Protein 2.0 if you're watching the YouTube channel at Target and Amazon. Really, you can try the orange mango flavor. There's a cotton candy flavor. I got a shipment yesterday, mixed berry. Have that in the fridge right now. I'm super excited to try that after my workout today. But definitely check out Protein 2.0, Windy City Sports Cards, and let them know Nicholas Moreano sent you. And again, you won't be disappointed with either Windy City Sports Cards or Protein 2.0. All right, everybody, this is the Nicholas Moreano Show. I'm your host, Nicholas Moreano. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Share this YouTube channel with a fellow Bears fan. Let's get into my last two storylines. Ooh, what do I have as fourth? I made this graphic yesterday. Oh, I do remember. Has something to do with the defense. Yeah, we got to talk a little bit on defense, right? Excuse me. So I think just hearing more and more from the defensive linemen, you guys, Montez Sweat, Gervon Dexter, Shamar Turner, thinking who else? We've heard from Grady Jarrett too. And I said it earlier, Dennis Allen has a complex defense. He's going to have these guys playing probably in positions that at times throughout a game and a series, things like that they maybe aren't typically used to. And I think that specifically for a guy like Montez Sweat, who would play on the right side opposite of the left tackle, if I have that correct. But just watching where these guys line up, I think it's going to be really interesting. And we were talking about Dio Dangbo, who got brought up earlier in the chat. That's a guy too that in his time in Indy, he would line up inside. He would line up on the edge. He would be in a 2-point stance at times. I'm curious to see how and what Dennis Allen is going to do with a guy like that, who does have some position flexibility, and how he's just going to intertwine him in different areas, different stances, alignments on the D line. And so that obviously that's like one of the tougher things to track in a training camp practice because everything's happening so quickly. And if there's a lot of movement too, that's definitely not going to help. But I'm really fascinated to see how, I don't know, exotic Dennis Allen is with some of that stuff. And all those looks do is help out Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, what to expect when maybe other defenses are bringing some of these looks in games where obviously it matters. But for Dennis Allen, I'm just really looking forward to seeing how that all looks in pads where maybe we'll see Javon Dexter on the edge. Montez Sweat lined up in a 2-point stance in between the B gap. Same thing for Dio Dengbo. Like all these things are, I think, important because like that group, you guys, needs to be far better than it was last year. And specifically Montez Sweat. Because if Montez Sweat's not operating like the $90 million man that he is being paid to be, how confident would you be in the Bears defensive line? Is that too much, weight to put on one player? Like, asking you guys the question here, but I truly believe if this defensive line is going to be any better than it was last year, it starts with number 98 in Montez Sweat. And I think using him in different ways could potentially unlock him to be more productive, more of a multiplier that he was brought to Chicago to be. So seeing the different ways that Dennis Allen can utilize him, hopefully that's the key there. Because you did bring in an older guy in Grady Jarrett, already 32. We just based off the chat, there's some skepticism about Dio Dengbo, Shamar Turner in the second round. So there is a lot on this group specifically. What is it? Jeremy Grant, the Bears defensive line coach. Like he needs to get the most out of those guys. He's going to be such an important coach, right? And I'm going to make. I mean, outside of Ben Johnson, I mean, if you had to rank the most important Bears coaches right now, how would you do that? Let's see. Sorry, Jeremy Garrett. I don't know why I always do Grant. Jeremy Garrett. Let's get the coaches right, Nick. Jeremy Garrett, I think, is going to play such a big factor in this Bears season. You're not going to hear that, I don't think, from any other Bears channel or show, but like, yes, Ben Johnson, number 1. Dennis Allen, number 2. But then when it comes to like position coaches, I'm going to put Jeremy Garrett. God, I don't know why. Jeremy Garrett, like 3rd for me. In I think maybe some people might go like Dan Rochar, the offensive line coach, but I think Rochar has more talent on the O-line than Garrett does on the D-line. Do you agree with me there? And because of that, you need to get more out of that group. And Dennis Allen's scheme needs to be able to help out the players that you do have. Because those linebackers, like Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, will not be as effective as they could be if the D-line isn't as great. That secondary that has all-pro and Jalen Johnson, what could be an all-pro season for Kyler Gordon. I've seen Tyreek Stevenson pop up in the chat here by Darren. Like that secondary will not be what it could be if the D-line's not effective. Jeremy Garrett, Bears defensive line coach, has a hell of a job upcoming for him this season. And so moving on the D-line, hopefully that helps different guys get into advantageous situations where they can excel. But that is something I will be watching out for when it comes to these storylines for training camp. Then the last one. Ooh, what can be number 5? And I could have probably gone with 10 like specific ones too. But this is, I think, going to be a fun one for a lot of people. but the practice intensity. And that's not only on the on-field product between players and one-on-ones, like the competition level has been raised all over this Bears team. So when we're watching the one-on-ones between wide receivers and DBs, man, I cannot wait to watch like a Luther Burden in the slot versus Kyler Gordon. Jalen Johnson and DJ Moore is always fun. The linebackers versus a guy like Colston Loveland. I have a feeling that Colston Loveland's going to cook some guys, whether it's like a Tremaine Edmonds or if you get one of the safeties there. I do feel like he's going to be a problem if he's out there. When he's out there. Let's put the when he's out there. So that is like one aspect of the intensity. But I'm telling you, if you guys get a chance to go out to training camp, and I hope all of you who are looking to get out there at some point, you will feel and you will see Ben Johnson's intensity. Eric Bieniemy's, a guy like Antoine Randall Al Harris, like all these guys, you'll feel that. You'll see it in how they coach. And I wonder how much of a notch that goes up. Look, training camp, long days, guys. It's hot. You're in pads. You get irritated. You probably get, I would assume if you're coaches, you get irritated when things aren't run correctly. Things can go awry a little bit more frequently if, maybe the heat's getting to you. And you're thinking about, oh, how the hell am I going to block Montez Sweat if I'm Ozzie Trapillo? And then you just kind of lose focus. And then that's going to ultimately affect the coaching staff. So I want to see the intensity. I can't wait to feel that and experience what that is actually like in this training camp. A guy like Jaquan Brisker is already like taking down guys. Rome the other day in practice over the middle of the field. That's a guy that has been waiting to hit somebody since the victory over Carolina in week 5. He's been waiting. You don't think that if Jaquan Brisker gets a chance in training camp, he's going to take it? Absolutely. Like, there's no question. You just got to do it in, make sure everybody's safe. But he's absolutely going to look to take that shot. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing all of that play out. The joint practices as well. Buffalo, Miami, right? Or Bengals. Sorry. Is it Buffalo and the Bengals? Why am I thinking Miami was, or no, maybe I am right. I know I put everything in my calendar here. Yeah. Oh, Miami and Buffalo. I don't know why I was thinking Bengals. Bengals was last year. It was like a rainstorm last year. That was insane. But Miami and Buffalo, those joint practices. I mean, you got one of the top, Buffalo being one of the top teams in the NFL, coming to Soldier Field, coming to Hallis Hall. Like, what does that look like? I mean, that's going to be a fun time also with Miami and all the speedsters they got. So the intensity there, it should be fun. And I think the way that Ben Johnson's been handling practice and conducting himself in this way with the intensity, the focus to details, there is no reason why that's going to all of a sudden just disappear. If anything, like I said, it probably turns it up. And I'm sure the players will feel that, but also I think want that, right? They wanted accountability at the end of last season. Ben Johnson has been the epitome of that. And I think it's been showing in these practices, like the play I was talking about earlier with Caleb and Roshan Johnson. Like, you want that as a player so that you can be better the next rep, the next series, the next training camp practice, next game, so on and so forth. But I think that's going to be super important and just overall just fun to watch. We're a month and some change away from training camp even happening. I'm talking about it here in June. So those are my top storylines to kind of keep an eye on as you're looking forward. And I'm sure maybe I'll have another show later on before training camp to see how they've been revised or a continuation off of whatever I built on. But here's what I'm thinking the plan will be for the dead period of the NFL. And again, I was thinking about this yesterday, actually the past couple days, because like there is nothing. There's no news. Maybe someone could be signed, little things here and there, but there really isn't anything going on. So I think I'll ask you guys, what kind of content do you want to see from this channel, from me, as we move forward throughout summer in, as we kind of approach training camp. So if you have anything, please leave a comment, DM me something. You can even, if you put it in here, if I don't see it, hopefully I'll see it when I, watch this back, but leave a comment, send me a DM. What I'm thinking I want to do, and again, I have to really implement this, stay focused on this. I want to go back and just watch, each individual player. I'm going to say the offense and defense, so 22 starters there, and just kind of evaluate them and then give you a breakdown of each of those players from their 2024 season, so that I have the clear understanding. You have a clear understanding of what they were like that season and now what we're kind of looking forward to in 2025. I get different scheme, different offense, like all these things factor into, but what do they look like? And I think sometimes after a season concludes, it's like that can get lost. We can look at stats, things like that, but there's so much more to a player than just the stats that they showed throughout a season. So that's kind of my idea of what I want to do, looking into each of these players, give maybe a grade, a report of what I saw from their best, worst, and maybe just a competitive game, and then go from there. That'll help fill out the dead period of the NFL and what that most likely is probably going to look like. And we'll see. It might just be more video content as opposed to like actual podcast form, but we'll see. I haven't finalized anything at this point, but that's what I'm thinking right here, right now, as we're at June 12th here in what is now the dead period of the NFL. But I appreciate everybody coming in and hanging out with me. And I'm already seeing some suggestions here. So appreciate that. Here, Windy City Twins. We'll read this before we kind of head out. Would be interesting to see a more personal side of you and your journey to what led you on this path to covering the Bears in the way that you do. Maybe some challenges along the way, top 5 moments, etc. Sure, I'm super down to talk about that. I've been fortunate too that a lot of younger I like to think I'm still on the young side. Just turned 30 not too long ago. But aspiring sports journalists, they always reach out. And I always tell them like how I got into this and, what it went through. And obviously what I've been going through the last couple months, being laid off from CHGO. So it's been really rewarding, interesting, challenging. And maybe I can just do a whole show on that if anyone's curious about, that side of things. I know it's not necessarily Bears content, but it is a part of my story of how I got to do, what I do. But yeah, I can definitely take that into consideration. And looking here at Kyle too. Thanks for all the hard work, bro, and love the shows. Maybe folks to break down Ben's offense playbook for a show if you have time. Yeah, no. I'll have to get on. I have somebody in mind that I think can definitely help us out with that. So appreciate the suggestions, the comments, and just helping me continue this channel. It means a lot to me, you guys. And just I'm gonna keep continuing to do Bears content. That's what I do, regardless of who I'm doing it for. Or you're always gonna count on me for Bears content because I love doing this stuff and it is who I am. Like, it's a part of my identity. I know people maybe don't like to. You want to separate like what you do for work with like who you are, but it's hard to say. It's hard to talk about me without associating the two. It's just who it is and who I am. But again, appreciate everybody for hanging out on this Thursday morning. I will catch you guys next week for some more Bears content with that plan maybe I was talking about, and then some of the considerations that you guys are putting out here in the chat. But everyone have a great rest of your Thursday. Enjoy the weekend. But until next time, bear down, Chicago Bears fans. Let's go.
Bend over to your right.
What the was that?
What's up, Bears fans? People want to hear me talk.